Hey, real quick, I know mental health is complicated and overwhelming, but MedCircle can make your next step an easy one. When you go to MedCircle, you'll get simple explanations and actionable advice on the mental health topics that matter to you and those that you love. Visit MedCircle.com and start your mental health journey right now. Sammy Grimm has seen the current broken mental health care model firsthand, falling prey to 2 different misdiagnoses. She has since taken a very proactive role in her own mental health care and has fought for the right diagnosis of borderline personality disorder. This is her story. We just talked about your whole story.
Yes.
What a roller coaster ride.
I know, isn't it?
I mean, some people think their life is tough when the food order comes in wrong, and you had a bipolar disorder from 2 different psychiatrists that was incorrect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was rough.
What was that like?
It was very frustrating because I knew there was something else wrong and that there was something, it didn't make sense. It didn't click.
Yeah.
And when I finally got the right diagnosis, I was like, oh, it finally clicks. It makes sense to me.
Yeah.
You know? It was so frustrating though.
How does borderline personality disorder affect your behavior?
There's so many, so I'll just start.
Yeah.
I'm very impulsive. So right now I have a normal hair color, but I go from not having a sense of identity. So impulsively, I will dye my hair, all different kinds of colors because I don't know who I am one week. And I don't know, I just try and identify with different things, if that makes sense. So there's that. I'm constantly terrified that people are going to leave me, like my boyfriend. I have dealt with like abandonment so much in my life that I think that has a huge, contribution to like how I am today with that. I'm constantly worried about him leaving me or, my friends leaving me. I do what's called splitting, which is black and white thinking. So I will go from really loving someone, like one of my friends, wanting to talk to them all the time, like, placing them on a pedestal pretty much. And then if they do something wrong or if they make me feel bad or they don't text me back, I'll go from loving them to absolutely hating them, I guess you could say. And that is a roller coaster in itself. And it's like so overwhelming at times. And the way I feel, it's so intense. And that's all I can like describe. You know what I mean? Like it's such an intense feeling because people will be like, yeah, everyone gets mad when someone doesn't text them back. And I'm like, no, you may be upset, but you're able to get past it within the hour most of the time, I don't know. But me, I will stew on it all day and I'll just be like, oh, I hate them so much. Like they must hate me. Like they don't want to talk to me ever again. Like, and it goes from 0 to 100 and it's just crazy, I've dealt with self-harm. I'm actually like 3 months self-harm free, so pretty
all right,
exciting.
That's good.
So
Very good.
And that was like a huge thing, just like self-harming and hurting myself was such a big contribution to how I was doing in 2017. So there's that. And
because in 2017 you had a very depressive year.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Really, really bad.
I want to go to where we talk about in that episode and let the viewers have a little inside look here on some of the things you were going through. So let's take a look at that. You start to go to therapy, you get on the medication. How does your life change?
I thought was going to be for the better at first. So we're getting into 2017 at this point. So at first I was like super excited because I was like, I finally have a diagnosis, yes, and then it kind of started to hit me that this is a very kind of serious diagnosis. And now that I know about it, I was like really researching and, really getting into the internet with this. And then I was reading what other people thought about people with BPD, which is...
Gotta be careful with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Gotta be careful with that.
So it's so stigmatized, and I don't know, it kind of threw me for a loop, I guess you could say. And I got really, really, really depressed, and to the point where I was in bed for 8 months and I couldn't work. And I've had really bad unstable time with working. So every year or so I would leave my job and find a new job. And I would have really bad relationships with the doctors I was working with. So I was a registered dental assistant for 7 years. And every year I was in a new office because I was so unstable with it, I guess. And my relationships with doctors and my coworkers was terrible. So I was always trying to find a better place when really I was the problem as well, and I didn't realize that. So 2017 happened, I quit my job, and I was just in bed, and I don't know exactly why, but I was just so down, I guess. And I think a lot of it had to do with me realizing what the diagnosis is and just trying to like cope with that, I guess. But it was very interesting. 8 months, I was down.
Now that was a rough year for you.
Yes.
But you say now that you are on the other side of that
Yes.
journey. And you attribute a lot of that to therapy. Well, the correct diagnosis.
Right, yeah.
Therapy for the correct diagnosis. Medication for the correct diagnosis.
Yes.
A slew of self-care tips and behaviors that you participate in, which you go into detail on our last episode. And a great support system,
Yes.
which includes your boyfriend, Brian,
Yes.
who we got to meet during the series as
Yes.
well. Yeah. How would you describe your life now?
I would say I still struggle. You know, it's a daily thing, I guess you could say, but I don't know. I'm a lot more positive. I try and be positive. I try and wake up telling myself it's going to be a great day instead of, you know, one thing, you know, upsetting me and me letting it ruin my day. I try and, you know, if something does upset me, I try and pick myself back up, I guess you could say, because before I would just let it just overcome the day, you know. So now I just kind of try and pick myself back up and tell myself it's going to be okay, and it's going to be okay, you know, and try and just be as positive as possible. My boyfriend is a huge factor in that. Luckily I'm able to communicate with him a lot, and he has a lot to do with how I can come from being in such a terrible mood and making me into much better mood. It's pretty crazy the way that we're able to interact and how he can kind of pull me out of that. So my support system is huge when it comes to that factor.
Now, growing up, you had what you called a chaotic childhood. What made it so chaotic?
Well, my mom was she was, you know, using drugs, and she was mentally ill as well, and she wasn't getting the right treatment for herself. She wasn't being proactive and trying to, you know, get help, and for her, not only for herself, but for her kids. And I think that really contributed to, you know, where I was and where I am today, honestly. So drug use and moving all the time, like I said, we never stayed in a place for more than a year. I went to over 14 different schools growing up. Before high school, I went to 14 different schools.
Before high school?
Yeah, I went to one high school, but before then I went to 14 different elementary schools.
Wow.
Yeah, it was just so unstable.
I didn't ask you this in the series, but I'm going to ask you now. You're not a therapist or a psychiatrist,
Right.
but do you believe that your borderline personality disorder was something that you were born with, or was it something that you developed because you had such a chaotic childhood?
That's a good question. I think for sure that it was because I had a chaotic childhood. I think it's possibility that it may have been, you know, in my genes or whatever. But I think for sure that contributed to it, you know. I think maybe coincidentally I had it before, but I think definitely my childhood has something to do with it.
If you had what we would consider a traditional or normal childhood, do you think you would get the borderline personality disorder diagnosis?
I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
You were able to have, my big takeaway, okay, from this series was that you were so self-aware at such a young age that you knew you had to go and fight for yourself to make a change so you didn't repeat the patterns of your parents.
Yep.
So that you could have a life better than you were living.
Yes.
Why do you think you had that?
I think just watching my mom go through such a unstable part of her life, like my whole entire life, she was just unstable, and I didn't want that. And I was constantly picking up her messes, you know, and trying to take care of my sisters, and it was just so, like I said earlier, chaotic, that I was like, I'm not going to live like this, you know. I'm not going to put my future children or my family members, you know, I don't want my relationships to suffer from that. And I want to be able to know how to help myself. So in turn, it will help others who have to interact with me, you know. And after seeing my mom and her interactions with people and how terrible they were, I was like, that is not going to be me. So that really pushed me and motivated me to want to get treatment.
So great for you to handle that situation like that, because a lot of other people be in that same situation and they wouldn't have what I call that self-awareness to make a decision, a better decision for themselves. They would just go down that road. When you finally get the correct diagnosis, and in the series we go into depth about how you were misdiagnosed 2 times and what that was like, and people can watch the series to get that. But when you got that correct diagnosis of borderline personality disorder, what did you feel like? I
was like super happy at first, because I was like, yes, I finally have something like tangible that I can figure out, like I can try and fix, I can work towards, I can, you know, go to therapy, now I know how to fix it, you know. But at the same time, I was like a little overwhelmed and like kind of scared, because I was like, oh no, what does this mean for me in the future? So it was kind of a mix of that, and, you know, not knowing what the future is going to be holding for me. And yeah, it was just a mix of like confusion and being excited about, you know, finally realizing what the heck is wrong with me.
You mentioned before we even sat down, you said, hey, just so you know, I might dissociate.
Yes.
So if I do, and I said, go for it.
Right.
What is that, and what does it feel like?
So dissociation is, the way I can describe it is like I will blank out kind of, and kind of go in a state where I can't hear anything that you're saying. Sometimes I will like black out and go completely somewhere else. So my therapist told me that when that happens, it's because back in the day, like if I was going through something traumatic, that I would dissociate then. And then if something triggers me now, like being nervous or like scared, you know, that I might trigger me to completely dissociate and not know what you're saying, completely like blank out, kind of like a numb state, I guess. And then eventually I can come to, and then I have no idea what you have said or, you know, what is going on pretty much, which happens pretty frequently.
What's frequently?
I would say for me, it's gotten a lot better, but it used to be every single day. Now it's at least 3 to 4 times a week probably. So it's getting a lot better. And I think therapy has definitely helped me with that for sure.
For the people who will watch this, what do you hope they'll get out of it?
I hope that I was able to help reduce the stigma against BPD, you know?
Please. You've got, shout that from the rooftops.
I know,
because
seriously.
First of all, it's, especially out of all the mental health disorders, either people don't know about that one,
right,
or they have such a warped opinion of what it is.
It's crazy, yeah.
I shot some videos with Dr. Ramani on borderline personality disorder, and she mentioned, she's like, this isn't what it should even be called.
Right, yeah.
The name itself is misleading. Yeah, so, sorry.
No, you're good.
Yes, I agree. And stigma. Good. Yeah. Okay, what else?
And just to know that if you're struggling, that you need to put yourself first, and you need to try and get help for yourself. There's tons of resources you can use. You know, I myself don't have medical insurance, and I still am able to find really good resources, you know, to help me with that. And there's really no excuse. And that's what I try and tell my followers is, you know, if they're, you know, they don't know where to start, I tell them that. And, you know, there's no excuse at this point. Like, you're old enough, you know something's wrong. You need to help yourself, for not only yourself, but for the people around you and for your family and your friends, because it's not only difficult for you, but it's difficult for the people around you, you know, and you have to want to help yourself and other people that's dealing with it, you know?
Good.
Yeah.
I also just loved what you said in the last episode. I am going to plaster it inside my brain, which is passion is a form of self-care.
Absolutely, yes.
And I never thought of it that way. I always advocate that myself and everybody find their purpose, find their passion, do what they love, blah, blah, blah. But when you look at it as a form of self-care, it takes the importance level from here to just a must.
Right.
You've got
You have
do
to.
it.
Yeah.
You have to do it. That was so good.
Thank you.
That was so, so good.
It's so true.
Anything else I should be
No.
asking, saying?
My brain is just, I got nothing.
We talked a lot.
I know.
We covered your whole life.
I know.
I loved it. Well, you can watch this series at MedCircle.com exclusively for you, a MedCircle member. I'm Kyle Kittleson, and remember, whatever you're going through, you got this.